go ahead and get started with the tips for using technology to engage learners. Again, the technology training team, along with the SN Title I office, welcome you today. My name is Kim Robertson. I'm joined by my colleagues, Megan Eric and Monica Jenkins, as well as Terry Jefferson from the Office of SN Title I. And again, we here with us. Just to preserve bandwidth, I'm going to turn off my camera. And as we take a look this morning at our focus for today, as I mentioned before, this session will not teach you specific tools, but instead we're going to address um, different tools that IT has purchased this year, essentially to add to your digital toolbox for you as well as your students. On our regular T3 website, we've grouped the tools based into categories just to help you make decisions about what your goals are for using technology in your lesson. For the essential tools that you see on the screen, these are tools that we suggest that teachers might choose to use on a daily basis. And then there are content creation tools. These tools encourage you as well as your students to be able to use them for engagement, collaboration, creativity, communication, and critical thinking. And then we have a few virtual whiteboard tools like Jamboard or your Zoom whiteboard or your classroom screen. And these, of course, will help you make modeling visual. But today, our focus will be on these particular engagement tools. These tools encourage active student interaction with content. So, again, for today's session, we are focused specifically on those. It's important to always know that when integrating technology, you always think of your strategy or your learning goal first, and then you consider the technology and how it fits. So rather than saying, oh, I learned all about Jamboard, let me figure out how to use it today, you might say, well, today, I know it's really important for my students to understand the main idea and the context of this selection. I know that I also want to engage them. What tool is going to give me the best opportunity to be able to do that? So we're going to help you, again, make the best decision about using particular engagement tools for how to engage your learners within the session. All right. Now, when we think about engagement, we think for the purposes of this session, we are thinking about different ways, again, that it can be accomplished within a lesson. So here are a few strategies, not nearly all, but here are a few strategies to consider when you're thinking about engagement, whether you're in a virtual environment or a face-to-face environment. So when we consider pacing, what are we talking about? Game-based activities, modeling thinking, collaboration, the use of video, and then finally, meeting the needs of all learners. It's something that's extremely important always, regardless of, we don't necessarily consider it an engagement strategy, but we recognize that it's critical in order to have an equitable learning experience for your students. So that's something that we're going to consider today. We are going to engage with you using Pear Deck. So when we think about Pear Deck is a tool that will allow us to really engage with students on the fly. Um, and the wonderful thing about Pear Deck is that at the course of any lesson, I could include specific interactive activities to help my learners show me what they know. If I were presenting in Pear Deck, I might see a black bar, and because so many of you are already familiar, this isn't new for you, but you see a black bar at the bottom of your screen to let you know that you are presenting with Pear Deck. So ordinarily, if I had a class of, say, 30 or less learners, I might very easily be able to switch from a teacher paced lesson where you're following along on your screen, and as my screens move, yours do. And then I could easily switch to a self paced lesson at the same time just by clicking on those three dots and turning on self paced and giving students the option to move at their own pace through a lesson. So ordinarily, if I had 30, I would already be in Pear Deck. We would have done various engagement activities. Today, we're going to replicate that behavior a little bit because I'm going to give you about 3 minutes In just a second, you'll see the link in chat to be able to click on a self-paced Pear Deck activity. While you're going through the self-paced Pear Deck activity, I am able to see your responses. I'm not, it's enabling me to see responses from all members of my class who are engaging in this activity, and not just a few who might be unmuting or showing their cameras. So I'm going to ask that my colleagues have already likely dropped the link to this particular Pear Deck in chat. Please open it in your browser. Make sure that you are able to see the self-paced session, or you can always go to bit.ly/engage PGCPS on your own. And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to complete this particular engagement activity. While you're doing that, I'm going to take a look at your results. All right, as you can see on the screen, as we take a look at pacing, what is exactly does pacing mean for us? And what's most important? I see that for a lot of you, it shows that having the ability to choose in one lesson is extremely important. And all I've done is just jumped into my results as a teacher, and I'm able to see in real time your responses to the particular activities. So we're just kind of taking the time to norm our expectations and understanding of what each of these strategies means. So for game-based learning, do you agree or disagree? Interesting. Quite a few. My green circle is all full with agrees. A few people don't see it as valuable, and that's wonderful. That's an option. In terms of modeling thinking, being able to demonstrate with an instrument. I see Miss Green as my music teacher. I see some people are happy to be here today too. So thank you for sharing that SEL check-in with us to get started with your day. Thinking aloud, showing and telling. All right, Miss Renier, sorry, Mr. Renier, looks like he agrees with our response. Thank you for that. On the collaboration slide, you'll notice a video. It's a 2-minute video. Feel free to go back and watch it at a later time, just for some ideas on how to keep students collaborating remotely. And let's see what we feel like are two of the most important reasons why we might use video in instruction. You'll notice that that's a drawing slide. And on that drawing slide, you're either able to draw your responses or you can use the text feature at the bottom to see your responses. You'll notice that because I've controlled the pace of this lesson during the course of one session, I put in a stop sign at the end so that you don't go forward into the teacher pace part of the lesson. All right, I see. For using video in instruction, reinforcing or introducing new concepts. All right, so that was our time. We're going to ask that you come back to the presentation. So join me back in the presentation, please. And we'll go ahead and continue. I'll give you about 30 seconds to follow me back to the presentation away from your self-paced. Now, as a teacher, if I were actually doing this with a class of about 30 or so students, I could quickly turn off self-paced, turn back on teacher-led, and it would essentially control the pace of your session itself. All right. So with that in mind, now that we've taken a look at a few different ways to use the strategies with instruction, I want to point out again, we just modeled for you pacing and how Pear Deck can be used for pacing in a lesson. You can very easily switch between student pace and instructor pace in one lesson. So you think about that as you're helping to engage your students. For those of you that found value in using game-based activities for for engagement, Pear Deck also has a game-based activity called the Flashcard Factory. It allows you to collectively curate words and their definitions, as well as drawings that could be associated with it. The team or your class would vet those, and then they have kind of a set of a flashcards to help them learn whatever the context of the words are that you want them to learn. So at this point, we're going to continue with the rest of the session by highlighting the strategies that you just were able to review in the context of the additional tools. So there we just saw an overview about Pear Deck and how Pear Deck works well with the engagement strategies that we mentioned. And I do want to mention that if we don't say a particular tool works with a particular strategy, it doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that the selection that we made might be a better choice if you're trying to think about the pace of your lesson or gamification or using video. So again, take these things in consideration as my colleague Monica is now going to share a little bit more about Pear Deck as well as Nearpod. So let me go ahead and make Monica the presenter.
Thank you, Kim. I'm going to present my screen. Okay, so hopefully everyone is able to see the presentation. So you got a chance to review some of the features of Pear Deck. Some additional things to know is that it does allow you to view those student responses in real time. So you had a chance to see that from Kim, showing your responses in real time. And because it's Google Slides, we don't have to worry about storage limits. Everything is stored in Google Drive. And then we saw that we're able to have hyperlinks and animations. So if you like to have animations in your presentation, all those things will still work with when you're using Pear Deck. Now, let's look at Nearpod. Nearpod is a very similar tool, but here are some ways that Nearpod is different. It does have a lesson library of over 8,000 lessons. Those lessons can be used as a way to get ideas about content, um, maybe just provide you with some samples of activities that you can look through. But the best thing about those lessons is that they're editable. So you can make changes to them, add your own content into those lessons. And you don't have to use them at all. You could also just use your own lessons like Google Slides or PowerPoint with Nearpod as well. Some additional features are for assessment. There is a quiz feature that is available. And you can see some additional student activities like virtual field trips and PhET simulations that students can interact with in Nearpod. So like I said, it is similar to Pear Deck in the sense that you do have the option of doing live participation in which the teacher is walking the students through the lesson as during your Zoom or Meet lessons. You can also do the student-paced option where students can work on the lesson asynchronously. Nearpod also has a feature that allows for gaming. So if you would like to do a game-based activity with your students, they have Time to Climb, in which students can compete to answer questions as they try and climb up the mountain. When we think about modeling thinking, we could use the Draw It tool from Nearpod in order for students to draw out or brainstorm their thinking as they are working to solve a problem. This may be great in math, science, or just any other subject where students need to brainstorm and think out their model their thinking through a concept. There is also the collaboration feature with the Collaborate board. And that allows students to share their concepts or their ideas to a shared board. And that board can be monitored by the teacher as well. And then when we begin to think about meeting the needs for all learners, there are two other features that are available. The immersive reader, and you may have heard of immersive reader in other tools as well, but the immersive reader allows for the text to be read to the students. And as the teacher, you can decide if you want to turn that feature on or off. There's also the ability for students to leave an audio response on certain questions, and teachers can also provide audio directions for some of the activities. So let's take a moment and take a look at a sample lesson. Now, unfortunately, due to time and our size today, we're not going to put the self-paced lesson in chat right now, so I will just walk us through that. But know that later on, we do have this sample lesson from the library available on our website that you can practice if you want to kind of experience that student view. I'm going to jump over to my self-paced lesson that's here. And as a student, I would enter in my name and click Join Lesson. And this lesson would start automatically. Now, again, as a student, I have this feature over here that allows me to take notes as I'm going through the lesson. So I can have those notes automatically saved to Google Drive so that I can look at them at a later time if I would like. So that's a nice feature that's available if students would need that. So as we're going through the lesson, you can see we can add content slides. Again, this can be your own content from the curriculum. We can add video. So if we wanted to have video, we could do that.
It's time for another big word of the day.
Okay. And here's some additional content slides that we can bring in. But now let's start to look at some of those interactive, engaging slides. So here is an open-ended question in which students could respond via text, or they could just record their audio and respond that way. Once they record their audio, they would click Stop, and then they can play it back to hear it. But on the teacher side, you would be able to hear each student's audio. This is an example of the quiz feature. And if as a student, I'm in that asynchronous mode and doing it on my own, if I decided, oh, you know what, I don't want to answer that question, depending on how you have set it up as a teacher, if I try and go forward, it's going to give me a message up, you didn't answer the question. So I have to go back and try and answer that question. And then I can move forward. And then here's an example of our draw it slide, the one that we can use to model that thinking. And so while I'm here and I want to model my thinking, maybe I'm not clear on what the directions are that I'm supposed to do. So again, as a student, this is where I would find that immersive reader feature. And I can click on that to hear the text read to me.
Can you remember from the video what the word reason means? Use the text and drawing tools.
And you can see, and there's additional ways to personalize hearing that text for the student. But now that I'm here and I want to model my thinking, I have the choice of using the text tool. So maybe I want to type in reason. And then from there, maybe I want to actually draw and model. So maybe I'm going to brainstorm some ideas and draw out some different things that reason means to me. Okay, and I have the ability to add images as well. And then lastly, there is a polling question. So you can always gauge how your students feel about a lesson or if they need additional support on that particular lesson. So that was just a quick review or a sample of a Nearpod lesson. You'll notice again from the library that they work with various partners, but we can search the library by content area, by grade level, and by standard. But most importantly, we can bring in our own content and begin to work with Nearpod using our own content as well. So at this point, you heard a little bit about Pear Deck. You had a chance to experience Pear Deck, and you saw a little bit about Nearpod. I'm going to open a poll to just ask you a question. Which tool would you like to explore more after today? You should see the poll opening up on the right-hand side of your screen. If you don't, no worries. But go ahead, and for those of us that see that poll, I can see the answers coming through. Which tool do you think after today you want to dig into a little bit more to see if it will meet the needs of your classroom? Oh, and I can see we're kind of even back and forth, but Nearpod is starting to kind of pull ahead with the one that you're thinking that you want to explore more. So I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to answer that poll, and then I will be closing the poll so that we can continue on with this session. All right, so I'm going to close the poll now. And I apologize for anyone that was unable to get their answer in at this point, but we will. All right, so I can see that it looks like we have about 32% of us that would like to move forward with learning more about Nearpod after today. And that's wonderful. It does take a moment for those results that poll to close, but I will post it so that you can see the results of it as well. All right, so now let's take a look at another tool that we have available, Smart Learning Suite Online. Now, Smart is not a new tool for us, and some of us may say, oh, well, I'm familiar with Smart because of the Smart Board. Smart Learning Suite Online is their platform that we can use with or without a board. We have a district license to Smart, and so you can use this tool as part of your virtual learning as well. It has lesson pacing, just like the other two tools that we've shown. It also has modeling thinking through the form of an activity called Shout It Out, which allows students to brainstorm their ideas together as a group, and collaboration through their collaborative workspace, which allows for a teacher to put students in smaller groups and give them a document or a page to work on together. And this teacher can then kind of pop into each group and see how they are working. But one of the things that we know is used most often is their game-based templates. So if you're looking to add gamification to your lessons, this may be a good starting point for you. They have various templates that you can use to incorporate games as part of your instruction and to kind of do formative assessment with your students. So I'm going to show you a look at one game. This one is the sorting activity. And again, it's done right now in a self-paced mode. So I'm going to click start as the student. And so now I have two categories and I have to drag the content to the correct category. So this might be a great way for me to just review to see if I understood the concept as a student and what we learned. So let's see if I drag it over to building a great society, it goes away because that is the correct answer. If I chose something that was an incorrect answer, like Head Start was part of the New Frontier, you notice that it will bounce back. So this is, again, a way for the students to do a self-check to see, do they understand, do they know the different things that has been reviewed as part of your lesson? So I'm not going to take the time to do all of these right now, because I want to tell you a little bit more about Smart Learning Suite. So here is just a glimpse of some of the other templates that are available. You see that they have a lot of math manipulative templates that are ready to be used. You just add in your own content. They also have graphic organizers. Again, you plug in your content, but the organizers are already there and ready to go. And then they have the templates for questions and reflections. And as I mentioned earlier, There are other game templates, ones that students can play individually, as well as ones that can be done collaboratively. So take a look to see how you might be able to use some of these features of Smart Learning Suite as you work with your students. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Megan because she is going to walk us through some additional strategies that we could be using with our students to engage our learners.
Thank you, Micah. I'll take just a moment to share my screen. We know that video is a great way to share information with students and to address the visual and diverse needs of our students, but we know that just giving our students video isn't enough. We don't always know, did they watch it? Did they understand it? Do they have additional questions? So using a tool like EdPuzzle, we can provide them videos and embed multiple choice, short answer questions, or even notes to give them a chance to pause and reflect on something else that we want them to notice about the video. The thing I love about EdPuzzle is that I can create my own video, so it's custom to exactly what I want my students to know, or I can pull from a library of also wonderful videos from YouTube to Nat Geo or TED Talks or even Crash Course. And I can add those questions or short answers to any of those. So here's a look at what the results look like after you've given the video to your students. I can see information about who has participated, who has watched the video. Here I can see their actual responses to my questions. And I can also see how much time they spent, if they just started the video, or if they completed and turned in all of the responses. So you don't have to wonder anymore if they're actually participating. You really can get that look at it. We're going to take just a brief look at an example that was shared with you as part of today's systemic PD. And I'm actually going to jump over one tab so we can see this. This is a video that was shared from the elementary reading department. And I'm only going to play a small portion of the video so we can get an idea of how EdPuzzle works.
Let's reflect on your practices. How do you ensure that all your students have a voice? How are your students given the opportunity to interact with the content?
Actually, we'll skip ahead just a little
And
bit.
how are you continuing to follow that gradual release of instruction, where we are having time to model reading skills and strategies, and then giving opportunities to practice and demonstrate understanding of what has just been modeled? Let's stop here for a moment to answer this question.
And so you can see here is an opportunity to post my response, but I also have the opportunity to rewatch the content. So as a student who may need to hear things more than once to process, I have that chance to go back and engage with the content again at my own pace and then provide my response. I like this example because she's not only giving us information, I'm hearing my own teacher's voice. So that's really important to me, but I'm also having a chance to stop and think. So EdPuzzle is a great way to give your students a chance to engage with content in an asynchronous way. Okay, so now that we've looked a little bit at EdPuzzle and how students are using video to receive information, let's think about a way that they can use video to share information. So Flipgrid is a free tool that we have available that allows students to respond to questions or topics using their voice or their video or by recording their screen. And we do have to note that students do have, or parents did have the option to opt out if they don't want their children to use Flipgrid. So if this is a tool you'd use in your classroom, we just want to be mindful and make sure that if our students' parents have opted out, we provide them an alternate activity. So we can use it to give them a simple prompt to respond to, but we can also create a game with it. And those games that are in Flipgrid are called flip hunts. And instead of just responding to one question, you might give your students sort of a virtual scavenger hunt and they're responding to multiple pieces. So it's a fun way to engage them either in learning, maybe they're looking for different math pieces around their house, or maybe you're just using this as a way to connect to your learners when they're not with you and get them to have some fun with each other and kind of address those social emotional needs that we know they all have. And just like Pear Deck and Nearpod, Immersive Reader is connected to Flipgrid as well. So for our students who are still struggling with their reading, we can engage them with their auditory learning so they can engage with the content, and then they can respond to us with their voice. So we're going to take a look at a Flipgrid in action. This is one that is designed for an elementary math classroom. And I'm going to pretend that I am the student here. So the teacher has already created a topic. I can see the question. There's a little graphic to support this so I can connect to that visual. There's actually also an attachment here which shows basically the same picture if I want to use that as part of my response. So I'll click that just so we can see how that looks. And you can see here I have basically a piece of paper that if I were a student, I could have this printed and I could write on this if we were in the classroom, but I also have it available for digital response. So let's see how all of this works together. I'm going to click record a response, and we'll look at this from two perspectives. First, I might pretend that I am a student who really prefers to respond to my math on paper. So I drew what the teacher had, and now I'm showing how I can divide these into my arrays into two equal, or I can divide my array into equal parts in two different ways. And so I could click the record button and I could record my explanation for this paper copy. So this is really nice for students who it's easier to work on paper. They can still show their work and explain their thinking. Let's say I'm a student who prefers to use the computer. So first, I might come up here to the top right and remind myself what the topic was. I could also use the icon up here to add some notes to remind myself what I want to say. But let's say I have it all figured out and I'm ready to share. So I'm going to come down to the effects button, and I like this feature, the board feature. So from here, I'm going to choose a grid board, and I could choose to let the teacher see my face while I do my explanation, or I could sort of shrink my face, especially for those of us who aren't as comfortable on video, and just record my screen. And now I'm going to go ahead and choose my pen tool, and I'm going to recreate that grid real quick. So we'll just do one of them for the sake of time today, and we'll pretend that I have very good drawing skills to create this grid. And my math would be much better, but again, we're just kind of putting it together here. Our students would have all the time they need because this is all the setup. We can choose to have their grids or their videos limited to certain amounts. So I might say, take all the time you need to get it set up, but when you start recording, let's just keep it to 2 minutes. And let's see, let's imagine 6, 7. Okay, great. I have all of my grids here. And so now I'll pick a different color and I'll start my explanation. So I'll start recording. So I'll say, I can divide this array into 3 groups of 2 times 7. And I see 2 times 7 here, and down here I see 2 times 7, and so on. And here's 2 times 7 again. And I know that 2 times 7 equals 14. So I can add 14 plus 14 plus 14 to get to 42. So I know that 6 times 7 equals 42. And they can continue to explain, but as a student, I'm letting you really understand how much of the math I understand versus me just drawing that on paper and maybe not really understanding how it all fits together. Then I can click next. And if I can divide this array, I need to hear it again. If I need to edit my video, I can do that. But for the sake of today, we'll say that it's good to go. I can click next. If I wanted to put a selfie with it, I can, or I could ask my students to choose a frame. So maybe I want them to actually just show me their final answer as their frame, as their final response. And so that this is what shows up. And I can click submit. And so it doesn't fully show, but if I click complete, I'll notice back here, I start to see other students' responses. So as a teacher, I can come in and listen to these, and I can choose how much I want them to, if I want them to respond to each other or not. Or I could then encourage the students to come in, listen to someone's, and then they can engage in the back and forth conversation about, oh, you chose that way to break up the array. I didn't think to break it up that way, or whatever the conversation we want it to go. So you really start to create that digital community, even if there are in a virtual environment. All right, so we only have a few minutes left, so let's recap about all the things that we've talked about today. We've talked about quite a few different strategies: pacing with Pear and Nearpod and Smart, game-based activities like Flashcard Factory or Time to Climb, or in Smart, we had all those activities that Monica briefly showed us, and then we mentioned Flip Hunt. Modeling, we saw all different ways in Nearpod and Smart, and now in Flipgrid, and of course, in videos, we know that EdPuzzle and Flipgrid really support those pieces. Just as a reminder, all the tools that we looked at today, almost all of them we have a paid license for the district. So Pear Deck, Nearpod, Smart, and EdPuzzle. And we don't even need one for Flipgrid because Flipgrid is a fabulous free tool from Microsoft. But all of this in mind, we really want you to remember that we focus on the learning first and the tool second. What do I want my students to do? Great. What's the tool that's going to be the best way to help me get them there? That's the one I'm going to try today. All right, so after today, because you're going to hopefully see and hear a lot of great things today, one, we want you to know that your attendance, we're capturing it through WebEx. If you didn't sign in with your full name or your PGCPS information, there is a form on the site that you used for today. But speaking of site, I want to take you to the T3 website for a moment to point out 3 key areas. So I'm going to jump over there. And the first is when you come to the T3 website, we'd love for you to visit our upcoming trainings page so you can see any special events that we have coming up. You can see our current month's classes, and you can also see the information for that month's office hours. And our office hours are simply a 1-hour session where you can drop in and ask questions related to a specific tool. But if you'd like to just revisit content, we have 2 areas where you can do that. Up here in the top right, we have our digital tools page. And this page is organized based on our essential tools, our engagement tools, which is what we focused on today, as well as our content creation and virtual whiteboard tools. So I'm going to just click on the Nearpod one for an example. And you'll see we have some information about our license, some guides, some videos that you can access. And Monica did mention earlier that there's a sample self-paced lesson. So if you want to check out what that lesson looks like for Nearpod, you can come to the Nearpod page from the digital tools page and view that sample self-paced lesson. And then lastly, another really important part on our site that we hope you visit is the webinar recordings page. And this is where you'll find recordings of a lot of the sessions, most of the sessions that we've held over the summer and this year, and even some of the ones from last spring. But at the bottom of the page, we will have the videos posted from the other sessions for today. So we know that you're only able to choose 2 sessions, but we are having 5 of them today. So we do ask that at some point you come back and you look for the engagement strategies section and check out those videos as well. And if there's a presentation, a link to a presentation, to view that, you can always click the drop-down menu and the link might be there or under the video, but you will have access to that for many of the sessions. So I know we are coming right up on time, and we just wanted to again say thank you from all of us. Again, there was 3 of us from the technology training team and our welcome guest, Terry, from the ESSA and Title I facilitators group. And of course, we wanted to also thank you to our ASL translator, for joining us today and helping to make us more accessible to everybody. So we thank you for joining us, and we hope that you revisit the site so that you can join another session this afternoon. And always reach out if you have questions about bringing these into your classrooms. Thank you all so much.